Very much for staying on here on News Desk. Now, Wednesday, we began our conversation around World Environment Day and marking the day this year, 5th of June 2014, which falls today, Thursday. Now, we will continue that conversation here. And, the day has been set aside by the United Nations Environment Programme to raise public awareness and take positive environmental action to protect nature and the planet Earth. Now, what we are focusing on today is how well we have used or abused natural resources here in the country. We want to look at, natural resources as a very important aspect of our environment, which affects you and I. With me in the studio to help us do this is Dr. Edward K. Nunu. He's a lecturer from the Department of Environment and Development Studies at the Central University College. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Let's start off with an assessment of natural resources use here in the country.
Thank you very much. As we all know, Ghana is well endowed with natural resources. And in all cases, we anticipate that these resources should contribute immensely to the socio-economic development of our country. But as history has it, in all developing economies where these natural resources exist, they have been literally being abused. And it's the same thing we see here in Ghana. Over the past decades, our resources have been extensively exploited. But as to whether we see the benefits, we say no. They have been exploited.
How do you mean that they've been exploited, yet we can't see benefits?
The hallmarks are all over. If we talk about timber resources, our timber resources have been depleted extensively. Yet, what do we get out of that? They are being exploited by timber merchants, and then these are exported. They used to be exported in their raw state, not being processed. And when we do that, we know the consequences. We don't benefit from it. Yet, it has an adverse impact on our economy. As we know today, we have been talking about climate change. When we do harvest these timber resources, indiscriminately, what we are doing is that we are literally releasing carbon dioxide into the environment. And as a result, it is contributing to the climate change issue, which is being debated.
Let's look into what we're referring to as natural resources here in our conversation.
When we talk about natural resources, we are talking about resources that have been endowed nations by not the making of man, that's naturally endowed by God.
So these will include which
we
kind
are talking
of resource?
about mineral resources like gold, oil, petroleum oil.
Okay.
We are talking about timber resources. We are talking about the very land that we live on. We are talking about coastal resources. Even the very air that we breathe. These are natural resources which could be of immense help and benefit to one's economy. However, if these are not managed on sustainable basis, if these are not judiciously exploited, then the consequences is what we see in our part of the world.
Let's start off with, I want us to look at each one of those resources you have mentioned. Okay. We'll start off with mineral resources. How well have we done in judiciously using the natural resource we've been given, judiciously exploiting the resource we have?
Yes. If we talk about the mineral resources, we can talk about gold, we can talk about diamond, we can talk about bauxite, even iron ore. But all that we can see is or hear of is gold. The other resources are literally missing from our data.
Is it that they are finished, or it's a matter of we not have any interest in perhaps mining iron ore?
Relatively, I think the preparation and then the resources that you need to put into exploiting these other lesser known or lesser head mineral resources are relatively extensive as compared to gold. You know, we hear of surface mining, we hear of this galamsey issues. We cannot say the same for, let's say, bauxite or manganese. You will need extensive capital resources to be able to mine or exploit these other resources. But unlike gold, all that you need is a shovel and whatever, and then you can get into the galamsey business. And that has contributed extensively to our abuse of our natural resources in terms of gold and mineral resources.
At the end of the day, whichever style of mining we choose to undertake, we affect adversely the environment.
Exactly.
Now, we've had mining communities complain about activities in their area which they believe is hanging the community on or the land space on which they live in. What is wrong with our bid to mine the natural resource that the Lord has given us, as far as protecting the environment is concerned? What are we missing there?
Yes, what is wrong basically with our mining activities, and then for that matter, exploitation of all other natural resources in Ghana, is that the land belongs to someone. The land on which these gold mineral resources are found belongs to somebody. Here in Ghana, we talk about the skin or the stool. And therefore, if, of course, the government is the final arbiter of all these resources. And therefore, in the exploiting these resources, if we don't take care in identifying the various groups or elements or the parties involved.
I'm more concerned about what we do to the vegetation when we mine, and so my question is pointed at we want to mine, we have to mine, but how do we do it and do it properly?
Yes, and as I said, first of all, we need to identify all the parties involved. Talking about the government on one hand, the community on the other hand, and then whoever is coming to mine these resources. If these parties can come together, sit down and fashion out a plan as to how to do it, then I think we'll be a step ahead of trying to manage or exploit these resources on judicious basis. But what normally happens is that it's either between the government and the third party, leaving out the third party, the second party leaving out the third. That's basically the community. And when that happens, the company, the firm or the mining firm or company believes or thinks that he has done what he's supposed to do according to what the government has asked him or her to do. And then once the company has done that or thinks that he has performed that, he does it in neglect of its consequences on the environment. And this is basically what we see. The company is supposed to satisfy certain basic criteria as may be proposed by EPA or something. But the point is, do we follow up to see if these contingency measures or reclamation or disclosure measures are being put in place? That's what we fail to do.
What would be some of the measures we'll put in place so that in as much as we mine, we do not disturb the vegetative cover?
Yes, it's simple. If you want to mine, you need an impact assessment. You go to EPA, they will tell you, you have to satisfy this. And I'm sure they do it. But as to whether they follow it to the latter, In somewhere of the environmental impact statement, it will be stated, they will be asking you how you are going to reclaim the land after mining. And you need to produce a plan as to what you are going to do. The question is, does those institutions or agencies responsible for monitoring and evaluating these processes do it?
Let's move away from mining now. Let's talk about the air we breathe as a natural resource.
Exactly.
How important, I mean, we know the importance of this, but what are some of the things we do that may affect the purity of the air we breathe?
Yes, a lot has gone on, a lot is going on, and which goes to affect the air, the quality of the air that we breathe. Just as I drove in here this morning, I looked at what was happening on our road. You know, we have a lot of traffic jams. And just stay back a bit and look at the particulate matter that's coming out from the car exhaust. The whole city is polluted with particulate matter.
But we can't do without the cars.
We can't do without the cars, but we can do something about the exhaust fumes. There should be policies in place to check if you are importing a car into the country, if you are bringing in a vehicle into the country, there should be standards. I mean, it does happen in Europe and elsewhere in the Americas. Everywhere. In the developing countries, they do it. You can't drive certain cars beyond, they have termed it carbon 1, carbon 2, carbon 3, carbon, etc. If you are driving a carbon 6 car, a carbon 1 car, carbon 2 car, it means your vehicle is polluting the environment. And therefore, you either have to pay so much in terms of pollution tax, or you get rid of the car. We don't see that here. Secondly, we are so used to the used to polythene bags. We use, and these polythene bags we see around sachet water, these black ones that we see our market women use in the markets. After using them, how do we dispose of these polythene bags? Look at the refuse that are being piled up in the city. What do you think will happen? All these breeds germ, and they give a pungent smell into the atmosphere. Most of them are cancerous. They are contaminated, and then most of the times people even fill these polythene bags with refuse, other excreta or something else, and then dump them, and they give a very pungent smell in the atmosphere, which is not healthy for human consumption. Yet we live in it, we sit in it, and then we do whatever we want to do in this. And this is very serious.
What would it take for us to take better care of the air we breathe as a natural resource? Because it looks like, you know, if you don't make money from the resource, it doesn't really come across as, you know, something of paramount, you know, or something of great priority. If you're not making money, nobody makes money from air, and so nobody takes care of the air. But what would it take for us to want to prioritize healthy air?
We may not see the effect instantly. It's a cumulative effect. It takes time. And that explains the reason why these days there are so many cases of cardiovascular diseases, carcinogenic diseases.
You mean the fact that we breathe in unhealthy air?
Exactly.
What's the relationship between unhealthy air and cardiovascular disease?
Well, as I said, these are, for example, if you stay in the carbon monoxide or methane, and we get these things from the fumes from car exhaust. You know, if you stay in this if you keep long hours in traffic, you are accumulating these substances, particulate matter, and over a time it accumulates, and it affects the heart and then your lungs. And of late, we have several reports from the hospitals as a result of heart attacks, cardiac failure. I mean, this can be contributed to some of the particulate matter that we talk about.
What can we do about the unclean air? What can we do to make the air clean?
Yes, what we can do about our environment in terms of air is simple: to put out and make sure we discipline ourselves as individuals. We implement laws that are supposed to protect the usage of some of these substances, and then basically keep our environment clean.
That's a long way ahead.
Yeah, it looks like, but I think it will take the political will. There are so many reports, there are so many recommendations stating what we need to do on some of these things. They are just lying there on shelves. It will take a political will to do that. It will take massive environmental education to let the people know that what we are doing is bad. We need to change our attitude as citizens. And if we are able to do this, you know, when you go to the developed countries, there are so many of the things that we see here are not done there. Eat and you just throw out garbage from a moving vehicle. You can't do that.
What role then can an individual like myself, like whoever is watching, like you, what role can we play in our bid to have safe and clean air?
Yes, what we can do as individuals, for in my case, I'm a lecturer with the Environment and Development Studies Department of Central University. What we are doing is capacity building. We are teaching the students how to manage, how to keep, how to walk, and how to live in a healthy environment. Therefore, if we're able to produce these students and they come out, graduate, they should be able to talk to their colleagues. They should be able to educate the public that what you're doing is bad. If you do this, this is what is going to be the consequence. And you, in your capacity as a journalist, I think you have a larger platform to be able to say much more on what is happening. You see them happening everywhere. You see them. I'm sure you see them. So you have a larger platform, and you can be a very good ambassador of helping to curb the injustices, if I'm permitted to use that word, on our environment.
and I believe with this conversation we just started that. But I also think that it will take a lot of discipline on the part of individuals, you know, to not to litter, you know. If you don't have the discipline not to litter, it will be difficult for us to do anything. But what is more worrying is the fact that, I mean, since we are talking about pollution, it's just right that I wrote this in. What's more worrying is the fact that, in spite of the fact that Ghana as a country produces more organic waste than inorganic waste, we are still unable to effectively manage the waste we generate here in this country. As an environment and resources lecturer, when you sit back and you look at the way we manage waste in the country, what do you come up with?
I think we've made some efforts, but it's way far not enough. It's not enough. If you look at our waste management technology here in Ghana, it's just a landfill. Just collect the waste and then dump them somewhere. Countries have moved away from this level to just waste prevention. We need to graduate from just collecting the waste and then dumping them somewhere. We can literally turn this waste into even energy. We are sitting on an economic, a potential economic a resource which could be channeled into the waste sector. And I think it's about time that we begin to look at some of these things, turning waste into energy, some form of energy. I don't know what is preventing us from engaging in some of these things. Of course, our form of energy, the kind of waste we generate here is mostly of, how do you call it? Home domestic matter. You understand what I mean by domestic matter? It's watery. Most of them are coming from domestic home waste, refuse, if I should put it that way. And it will be very difficult. It takes the extra miles for you to go ahead with this kind of waste to turn it into waste. However, we can equally channel this into fertilizer, source of fertilizer for our farmers. This could be directed into the agricultural sector. We could easily channel this to produce gas. Okay, for most, look at what our secondary schools or the senior secondary schools do for our students in terms of food production. They depend on the LPG gas to cook, to provide food for the student. If we could even channel the waste from these secondary schools into gas production, which could be easily done. It's been done on a pilot basis in most of the sectors around the villages, especially the clinics and hospitals in the villages. We can as well turn to solar energy.
Which means there's a lot we
can make out from our waste, which is becoming a problem.
We're almost drowning in our own waste. Let's move away from that to let's talk about our coastal resource. And we've done terrible with our beaches. We've done terrible with our seas.
Exactly.
We simply don't know how to handle it. I mean, it's sad that you hardly find a clean beach here in this country. There are a few of them, but not enough. What can we do about them?
What can we do about them? You know, as I said, it will take the political will to be able to do this, and then a massive educational campaign, environmental educational campaign. As you said, if you take a stroll down the beaches, you see people defecating, you see people literally dumping waste on the beach. Yet, if you go to the advanced country, they have turned these places into a money-making venture, into tourist attraction, into tourist resorts. What can't we do? Do we have the necessary apparatus for our communities to dump their waste? How are they collected? Because the household does not have any place to dump their refuse. They take it to the beach to dump it. Even if there's a container or a refuse bin for them to dump it there, the persons in charge to come and collect it will not come. And for about 2 days, 3 days, the thing will be standing there breeding house flies, which of course are carriers of various diseases.
Let's look at the sea as a resource. Some people are of the opinion that, okay, when we put in more fecal matter into the sea, then we are going to have some more fish because the fish will feed on the fecal matter. Now, you environment and resources, your business. Tell us about sea as a resource and perhaps how we are defeating that purpose.
You know, the sea has a lot. The sea has a lot. It could be used to generate energy. Wind turbines. We can produce energy from that. People are literally converting seawater into drinkable drinking water. What can't we do out of that, from that? There is a lot for us to do with the sea. People are winning sand for constructive purposes from the sea, within the sea bed.
Is that safe?
Well, it depends. You see, you don't just go there and then start winning the sand from. Not on the beach, from the seabed. That's what I mean.
Seabed itself.
Yeah, the seabed itself.
And that's what I'm asking, if it's safe.
It is. You need to have an impact assessment. You don't just go in there and take it. you need to have an impact assessment to determine which way to go and then take it. We have fishes, but these are being abused. They are being abused. The beaches are being contaminated. If you go to the Lavender Beach, what is just around our Korle Bu, famous Korle Bu, what do we see there? You know, these human excreta are supposed to be treated before they are being dumped into the sea, but we don't do it. We just leave everything into the sea. And it is not, of course, you know, the fishes are not caught at where these materials are being dumped. You understand? Those who go for fish, who go to fish, go into deep waters to fish. So it may not be true that if you put those things there, you get a lot of fish.
I mean, it's water. You can have it move from one point to the other, and the fish is gonna get to it anyway. But I mean, when you look at the sea, it seems to have a lot of resource for us, and yet we don't seem to use
Take
it at all.
advantage of it. Yeah.
The only use we have for it is for us to pollute it,
Wow.
which is terrible. Let's look at timber.
Yeah.
Timber as a resource, it's important, but you give me your assessment of our usage of timber as
Our usage of timber has been appalling to the extent that if we are not careful, in the next 10-20 minutes, we are even going to import timber resources into this country. The timber resources that we have been depleted over the past decades. They have been depleted. What we have is just patches of trees left in the forest zone. Okay. These resources are exploited.
How did we get to that point where we have lost almost all of our timber resources?
Yes. Much can be attributed to government policy. I quite remember when we started the economic recovery program. Those days, the emphasis from the Bretton Woods and then the World Bank institution is that if you want to get out of this economic doldrums, then you need to export more. So what are we going to export as a country? What do we have? We relied mostly on our timber resources. And if you go back to history, if you trace the data back to those era, that was when we exploited much of our timber resources. Yet, that was when our environmental woes also started. Later on, they saw that no, this was not the way forward. Then they came back and said, now if you want to export those timber resources, they need to be value placed on them. You have to process them before you do it. So right from the onset, our foundation for exploiting those resources and for export have been bad, have failed, were not the best for us. And therefore, now that we have come to our realization that if care is not taken, it's going to have, of course, it's already having the adverse impact on us. We put in several measures. But the point is, do we follow to the latter? Do we have monitoring evaluation plans to see to it that companies that take these resources? Now, there is this timber validation aspect of it, that before you send out any timber product from the country, they need to be certified that they are coming from a sustainably managed forest. Do we monitor whether these timber resources have been produced from a sustainable based management forest?
It shouldn't be such a difficulty replacing the vegetation you take away, should it?
It shouldn't be. And this is one of the conditions. If you want to harvest one timber tree, make sure you plant about 5 or 10. The question, do they do it?
And even if we do we take care of them?
I quite remember there was a crusade for replanting of trees started somewhere in the early 2000s. Okay, I don't know. It was initiated by I think the sitting president as at then, but I don't know whether we still have that policy as at today. We don't know. Yet I think we have agencies and outfits responsible for taking care of those activities. I don't know whether they do work.
I see. You know, usually when we talk of climate change, I mean, in spite of what we do with our environment here, we are of the opinion that, well, we just have a two-weather system. We have a Harmattan and we have our rainy season. And, well, let me just say three. So we have the Harmattan, we have the very dry season, but then we have the rainy season. And then you're thinking, well, those who have the spring, those who have the winter, the summer, and the autumn, they have the problem of climate change because then we'll have ice melt melting from their end. How real is this problem to us as Ghanaian people?
In fact, climate change does not know any boundaries. Climate change does not need a visa, and it transcends across all borders. So if we sit here and say we don't have winter, we don't have summer, and then we can, when the ice gets melted, you know, they finally ends up in the ocean. And this goes to raise the level of the ocean. I understand this year's World Environment Days.
Raise your voice, not the sea level.
Raise your voice, not the sea level. We are all at risk. If we allow these things to go on, climate change, the variability is on course. The ice gets melted. I mean, look at what is happening along our coast.
Along our coast.
Yeah. So we are all at risk.
So we can't say that it's too far from us.
No.
Right.
In fact, it's just right in front of our doors.
I see. Right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Nunu, for your time once again. Dr. Edward Kweku Nunu
it's a pleasure.
Is lecturer at the Central University College, specifically with the Environment and Resource Development Department.